Previous videos in the decision-making series described a general learning loop we use to identify and solve problems. We first frame the issue we want to address. What's important to improve? Why? We then access and improve our mental model of the issue. What causes it? Once we understand cause, we can solve it. What's a good plan? And finally, with plan in hand, we can implement it. We also described how we often apply inappropriate, limited boundaries to framing up important issues, and that we then use fuzzy thinking to solve. Once you've applied the SYSQ skills to frame up an issue, to choose the right territory, the next step is to develop the right map. This is where we build, improve our mental model of the issue to address. This video will describe the skills required to build and improve the most useful mental models. Our mental models are often way too limited to be useful. This can happen for a variety of what I refer to as deficiencies of thinking. Here are just a few deficiencies: linear thinking, correlational thinking, proportional thinking. Linear thinking occurs when we assume that causality moves only one way. Algebraically, this is X causes Y thinking. If we want to improve Y, all we need to do is improve X. Let's use an example: my child's recently low grades. This may lead me to offer a reward, perhaps $100, to increase their grades. And this works, creating a feedback loop. That's feedback loop thinking, creating a balancing loop to keep grades high. However, the fundamental fix would be to build their intrinsic motivation. This is a different balancing loop. Unfortunately, my child may become addicted to external rewards, which decreases intrinsic motivation. This creates a reinforcing loop, vicious cycle, that makes things get worse, as I need to continually increase the amount offered. This is an example of the shifting the burden archetype. The archetype is directly applicable to many dynamics in life, including employee performance, getting hooked on consultants, and substance abuse. We misuse linear thinking all the time. Lowering price to increase sales can do that in the short term, but if this creates demand beyond capacity, this can then lead to decreased customer satisfaction and lower sales. Feedback loop thinking is the antidote. When trying to assess cause of real-world dynamics, ask, how are feedback loops responsible for this behavior? Correlational thinking is what I often refer to as proximity thinking. The gist is that we will assume just because one phenomenon appears alongside another, that there must be a causal relationship. Barry Richmond provided a simple real-world example of correlational thinking. An economic journal explaining how to predict future dairy production suggested that production can be predicted by feed prices, past production levels, farmer profitability, and several other variables. These, however, are not the main causal drivers of milk production. You need cows. Without cows, you produce no milk. The causal drivers of milk production are cows times milk per cow per year. That's it. Other performance measures might influence whether farmers decide to change herd size or cow utilization, but they aren't the root drivers. To combat correlational thinking, Barry Richmond proposed operational thinking. Operational thinking is to focus on the direct causal drivers of any performance measure. Typically, the causal driver is a resource and its productivity, or some activity and a coincident impact of that activity. Oil production is oil wells times oil well utilization. Sales is customers times sales per customer per quarter. Or nitrogen runoff is water runoff per month in gallons times nitrogen per gallon of water. In each case, knowing these two variables helps to identify actual levers for changing system performance. This is crucial for finding high leverage solutions. Proportional thinking is perhaps the hardest to quickly explain, but it's the idea that a 20% change in something has just twice the impact as a 10% change. The easiest way to explain this is that a 10% reduction from my optimal sleep duration will likely have little impact on my performance in a day, not approaching zombie status. A 20% reduction will have a much greater impact than twice the minimal impact. And a 50% reduction in sleep from the ideal will likely make me a zombie, perhaps useless for a task. Much more of a reduction than 5 times the minimal might indicate. We are making this mistake now with respect to the climate. We are currently on a trajectory to exceed the 1.5 degrees Celsius increase above pre-industrial temperatures. Each 1/10 of a degree above that target creates exponentially worse outcomes. The increase isn't proportional, it's non-linear, with potentially catastrophic outcomes. If we can't meet the 1.5 degree target, it makes no sense to settle for 2 degrees. We should work as hard as possible to stay as close to the 1.5 degrees as we can. The antidote to proportional thinking is nonlinear thinking. Some questions to apply nonlinear thinking include: how might there be a tipping point in the system? Is there an exponential relationship between causal factors? This type of thinking allows us to understand that a small change in a performance measure may have little impact, but a little more above that small change might create a tipping point. We need to understand such relationships, such tipping points, if we're to anticipate the price paid for an action, and to understand the potential impact of just a little more effort addressing something. In conclusion, we have many deficiencies of thinking that lead to nearly useless understanding of issues, and if we don't have accurate understanding, there's no way to fix them. SYSQ provides 3 important types of thinking: feedback loop thinking, operational thinking, nonlinear thinking. These skills are especially helpful for step 2 of the SYSQ process, and if applied, they will dramatically improve your ability to create useful mental models, what I call the right map of an issue. With that right map, we are then capable of navigating the path to the future we want. We'll discuss how to chart that path in the next video.